Good morning, everybody. Adrian Weidman here, CEO of Immersive Design Labs. Thank you for joining. Our webinar today is entitled Embrace the Bleed. And we've got a special guest today who will share his insight and reveal what we're shooting for in that title. Recording studios are typically designed to facilitate close miking applications. Baffles, gobos, cardioid microphones are all used to further isolate the sounds from one another. We recently produced an immersive recording session at the iconic East-West Studios in LA, where we measured the RT60 reverb time at 0.06 seconds, which is very, very dry. We here at Immersive Design Labs have created a new line of pressure microphones and an immersive microphone mounting array modeled after the Dolby Atmos 7.0.4 configuration, designed to capture natural immersive audio experiences accurately. You can see here a photograph of that array with our microphones on it. And it gives you a little sidebar there on what the full IDL array is composed of and our sales price. Here's another view of that same array. Dolby Atmos, we've heard lots of talk about Dolby Atmos. It's an artificial cinematic experience where you are asked to suspend belief. Traditional close mic'd mono recording and mixing techniques artificially produce and then in post-production try to mimic that various acoustic environments. From a philosophical point of view, while there's no right or wrong, our foundation is to empower the musicians and capture the emotional context of a song in its natural immersive environment. So with my guest today is my friend Dan Foley. Dan and I met each other back in the early 80s when we both joined Bruel and Kjaer probably within weeks of one another, I believe. And so Dan and I have kept in touch over all these years. And Dan has recently, through his career, retired and has built a studio just outside of Worcester, Mass, based largely on a variable acoustic environment. So I'm going to pass the show over to Dan, and he's going to provide some insight in how we both believe in embracing the bleed.
So again, thanks, Adrian, for the introduction. What I want to do here in this presentation is talk about this whole aspect of immersive environments, how us humans know what type of environment we're in. And now from the recording end, as Adrian was alluding to, how can one leverage the acoustic space and actually use that as part of the recording process as an active instrument in and of itself, as opposed to just mainly being a space where people and equipment reside. So before I get into any of that, I want to define what is a sound field, because this is a term that gets used a lot in our industry. So I found this definition, and the link is shown at the bottom of the slide. Sound fields are subject to the acoustic properties of any media the sound waves pass through, i.e. are reflected, absorbed, or diffused by. So in our world of recordings, that medium is air, and therefore what we deal with are the properties of sound waves that are propagating in air. And the key element of one of those properties is amplitude, which gets measured in decibels, and what's being recorded is a sound pressure value. And that's also what our ears respond to. And you'll see how that aspect of thinking about our ears as, and us humans as sound pressure, say, I'll put in air quotes, measuring devices, how that has a really big impact on the immersive experience that one has. So I want to introduce this term here of the natural immersive world, because this actually starts literally in the womb. I was surprised when I preparing the material for this presentation. I said, well, geez, when does the hearing system start to develop? And it actually starts real early. So the bottom line is us humans actually are in an immersive environment acoustically even before we're born. So we exist in a natural immersive world from our times of gestation all the way until the end of our lives. So if we go back to when we were cave dwellers here, as I said, our sonic world, it's naturally immersive. So again, what am I meaning by that? So if we look at a situation here where you've got some cave dwellers and Jim, the cave homeowner, so to speak, has got a fire going, and he invites his neighbor Bob, who's got the mastodon kill that he's dragging in. And he has got his brother there on the right and his wife and child on the left. And Jim says to Bob, hey, you got the mastodon meat here. And Bob will hear this at a certain point in time, as well as his wife and his brother. And this direct energy, as being shown by the green arrows, there will be certain arrival times that each person will hear Jim ask Bob, you've got the mastodon meat with you. And those arrival times are based on the proximity of the listener to the source. But there's another element of acoustics happening in here, which is all the reflections that are happening in this particular acoustical environment. And in this example, we're talking about a cave with very, very hard acoustically reflective surfaces. And those reflections occur later than the direct sound, and also at different amplitudes. So why I'm bringing this up is the people inside the cave, even with their eyes closed, they know that they're inside, whereas the visitor, he knows he's just entering the cave, and that information, even if it's not, even if there's no visual, say, stimulus here, that even if they're literally coming in with their eyes closed or it was dark that they were entering the cave, they would just know from the acoustics of time arrivals of direct and reflected energy and their corresponding sound pressure level relationships to one another. These people would know exactly what type of immersive environment they are in. So our modern world, again, it's naturally immersive. So again, one knows if they're in a city environment, for example, New York City, as shown in this picture, or more of a suburban environment. I mean, you definitely know if you're in an environment where you're surrounded by 50-story buildings, or one where, yeah, there still might be traffic on the street, but the buildings are only 2 or 3 stories high, like in a suburban town center, so to speak. You would know which sort of environment you're in from the get-go. And as I mentioned, we know what type of sonic environment or sound field we are in without needing any type of visual stimulus. So if we take this environment, this is actually was a place where I hiked several years back. This was along the south coast of England, along the White Cliffs there. So if I just pop myself into that environment, again, I don't need to have my eyes open to know that I'm by the ocean. I hear the waves on the left, and I also know that I'm outside because I'm basically not getting any reflected energy, or maybe a little bit of reflections off the ground, but definitely nothing around my head. So pretty much it's all just direct sound coming to me, and I know that I'm outdoors. Likewise, if we go to another extreme sonic environment, a large cathedral, and I pop myself in there, again, with eyes closed, I know I'm in a completely different type of immersive environment. I know that this other immersive environment is much larger, obviously much more reverberant, and I get a sense of spaciousness, and as it really can relate to a musical experience that certain genres of music are probably going to be more conducive to this type of environment than other types. So how can this immersiveness and thinking process about direct and reverberant energy, how can that lead us to, say, some modern devices? Well, just some folks listening to this might not be all that modern when we go back to 1968, but this is this gentleman here that some of you may recognize, but I'm sure you'll all know his name, Dr. Amar Bose of Bose Corporation, the inventor of the 901 speaker. And this speaker, at the time when it was released, was based on these concepts of direct and reverberant energy. That because prior to that, loudspeakers, and even still to this day, the vast majority of loudspeakers are designed where the speakers are pointing, meaning the drivers are pointing at the listener and not in any other locations. But Dr. Bose was thinking that maybe this method of designing speakers might need to be changed. So that was the birth of this whole concept of direct and reflecting sound reproduction. So he asked a very basic question. So Dr. Bose was an avid classical music listener and also quite an accomplished classical violinist. So he spent a lot of time listening to the Boston Symphony in Symphony Hall, and he asked a very basic question. The people in the audience, how much direct sound are they hearing versus how much reverberant sound that they are hearing? So we conducted some fundamental research in the early 1960s. For those of you that might want to know about this, you can certainly get more with doing some Googling on the internet with some of these early studies he did. It's pretty interesting in here. But here's what he found. He discovered that in Symphony Hall, only 20% of the sound energy that the audience members are hearing is actually coming to them directly from the stage. The other 80% is all the sound bouncing around all the different surfaces of Symphony Hall. And this ended up resulting in the Bose 901 speaker, and that's the product that launched Bose Corporation. And now they're one of the largest and a very, very well-revered audio company that's now selling all their products. So here's a picture of Boston Symphony Hall. And again, the reason I'm bringing this up is what Dr. Bose was striving to do, and he did, got to say, a pretty darn good job at it, was he wanted people in their living rooms, primarily those people who want to listen to classical music, to feel like they are in Symphony Hall. And these 901 speakers are shown in these diagrams showing how they're positioned. The majority of the loudspeaker drivers are aimed at the walls and not at the listener in here. So this is bringing up the aspect of it was this mode of sound reproduction where there is both direct and reverberant energy that is being reproduced, was key to recreating an experience as if you're in Symphony Hall in Boston. So how does this relate to this aspect of, in the recording world, let's use the recording environment as another instrument? Well, let's take a look quickly at some of the places where music is both performed and listened to. Because you have to also remember, too, that it's not just the musical experience that the audience is hearing from the musicians, but also that immersive environment is impacting the musicians themselves in terms of their, the energy that they're bringing to the performance, and possibly even having specific types of songs that have been composed for a specific environment. So here's a picture of Birdland in New York City. So here's one type of immersive environment. I'm sure many people attending this event may not have been to Birdland, but certainly you've been to club environments. There's also an auditoria environments, especially when it comes to listening to music in more academic settings. I remember as a kid in high school listening to not only the high school jazz band, but other performance groups that they had come to the high school. So that's another type of immersive environment. Then there's what I mentioned a bit earlier, this cathedral environments. Cathedrals have been around for well over 1,000 years. So that's an environment that's very, very conducive for certain genres of music. And then we now even have various places on in our country and on our beautiful planet here, where the natural environment itself was very conducive to the great musical experience. And thanks to the modern world we live in with music reproduction technologies, loudspeakers, and so on, we can actually enjoy extremely high quality music experiences in an outdoor environment that lends itself to a very, very nice immersive experience. So just want to thank you for your time here, and certainly open things up for any questions that people might have.
I have a couple, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah,
that
sure.
was fantastic. You know, you and I have spoken on this topic for, you know, our quick 10-minute calls that go for 60 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know, we talk about this idea of close miking, monaural close miking, where the traditional, or what we've known in the recording space for past 30, 40 years, is trying to isolate more, and not paying attention to the natural reverb in a space.
Right.
But then in post-production, try to mimic those things. I wonder if you could share some of your thoughts. And you know, we talk about artificial versus natural, and how what you've done with your own studio and how you sort of find that balance.
Yeah, no, excellent question, Adrian, and thanks for asking that here. So, yeah, as Adrian was mentioning here, I'm in the process of getting a new high-end studio going, and the key aspect of that is to have variable acoustics. So I'm just going to pop over, excuse me for a second, I want to get to a slide in here. So I guess everyone could see that?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Cool. So this is a picture of the large live room in my studio. And for those that want to get some more details, you can go to the website, donoharmmusic.com. These pictures are not on there yet, but on the website, there's actually architectural plans. So it can show you the size of this room and so on. But here's the key thing I want to point out, right? I've got classic immovable, keywords here, immovable acoustic treatment here on the ceiling, so polycylindrical diffusers, which are permanently installed. Then I have what can be semi-permanently or completely removed polystyrene diffusers mounted on these. They may not show up that well, but they're what's called Z-clips. And here, so these are 2 foot by 2 foot squares. The diffusers are 1 foot deep. You can see they're two-dimensional diffusers, and the polystyrene material is acting both to diffuse the sound and also absorb the sound. So what this is enabling me to do in this large room, and the room is, I forget what it's like, 23 by 27 and about an 18-foot ceiling in here. And I've got a nice Steinway Concert D in there along with some other instruments. But what this is enabling me to do, this concept, is I can slide these diffusers from left to right, or I can take them out entirely and now have the sound hit a plastered wall, or replace them with, let's say, a 2 foot by 2 foot absorptive box. So this is giving me a really wide range of sonic environments to play with. So the room, when it was finished from a construction standpoint, the last phase of the construction was plastering all the walls. And I wanted to do that deliberately because I wanted to know how crazy of a reverberation chamber is this when there is nothing in there for any acoustic treatment. And I did some measurements, and in some of the 1 octave bands, it's over 5 seconds. Now, there will be some permanent acoustic treatment in there. As I mentioned, the ceiling, those polycylindrical diffusers are permanent. And then I'm going to have bass traps in the corners, because you got to have those, you know. But everywhere else, all the other wall surfaces have these removable and movable, what I'll call acoustic elements. So so as to change the acoustic environment. And right now I've got 131, I think, of these diffusers in there. And the reverb time with just a simple app on my iPhone, I'm going to do more high level reverb measurements, but it's under a second right now. And I can even make that more dead. So when you were mentioning about these studios having reverb times of 0.5, 0.6 seconds, I'm able to achieve that in my space. But the flip side is I can go to 2-3 seconds reverb time, and then but also still put in pockets of, let's say, isolation, with gobos and more traditional things. And as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this, and in sharing this concept with some professional musicians here in the Boston area, they are actually loving this idea of being able to have variable acoustical environments that can now help with their whole creative process.
I also wanted to add, thanks, Dan. For those of you on the website, we've got a couple of earlier webinars, in particular an interview that webinar we did with Willie Porter and Mai Bloomfield from the recording we did out at East West, talking about this whole concept of the musicians and how that acoustic space complements a particular, they want to convey an emotion specific to a song, and Willie and both Mai going through this experience, they're now writing specific material to be recorded in this natural environment, this acoustic space, as Dan said, to use the acoustic space as an active instrument in the arrangement of a particular song. So we encourage, you can check out that webinar on demand, and we'll also have some listening material from that particular session. We're getting close to our time. One other question I want to pose to Dan here, because I know there's so much experimentation, and this is a bit of the wild, wild west. There's no right or wrong. But one question, and part of my research, I know, Dan, you and I had spoken about this idea of, in our array right now, we're using pressure microphones to capture this pressure wave.
So pressure meaning James, omnis, right?
Omni, yes, sorry. Omni microphones where the array is capturing the energy in the room, and amplitude variations and distant array convey this immersive space. So the question that often comes up is this idea of, the recording world, we all use cardioid microphones. So Dan, given the physics, what you described earlier, give us your thoughts on this idea of omni microphones, pressure microphones versus the use of cardioids.
Yeah, no, again, excellent question. So let me just go here because I do have something.
And we didn't prepare that question in advance, did we?
No. Hold on. I got to go to here and this. Okay, so here's the thing, is that you look at now, as I mentioned, we live in immersive spaces. Literally, before we're even born, we are experiencing sound in an immersive environment. And remember the slides I had earlier, being in the cave, that one's immersive experience is highly dependent on not only direct and reflected energy, but that the ratio of sound pressure level of the direct and reverberant energy are what they are in that natural environment. So if we look at a cardioid mic, and this is what the response is in 3D space until you get up to really high frequencies, right? The cardioid mic is basically as sensitive, or put another way, there is no attenuation to any of the sound reflections an omni mic picks up, regardless of what directions, including 180 degrees away from the back. A cardioid, though, is designed specifically for the purpose to attenuate and theoretically completely eliminate the sound energy that goes into the back and off axis. So using a cardioid mic for recording on, say, the array that you have, or using cardioids in a room setting, what will happen is that the reflected energy that's coming in that's way off axis, let alone what's coming in directly behind, that gets highly attenuated compared to how it occurs in the natural environment. So if we now say, well, now let's look at us humans as a microphone, right? I say the premise I have is, let's look at the omnidirectional versus cardioid human. So again, omnidirectional, well, here's Omni Dan. So here's a picture of me in my studio, but it isn't so much with me, it's that as humans, right, we have all this sound energy coming in from around our head. There's nothing in our physiology or what's going on where that sound energy is being attenuated in any artificial manner. Those sound reflections are what they are, both in terms of arrival times and amplitude. They are what they are. They're not being modified in any external manner. So now if we say, well, let's use cardioid mics, well, take a look at the human as the microphone. Well, now I've got attenuation, coming into the backside. Well, here's cardioid Dan. So it's like you want to view the use of cardioid mics and start to think about these mics as listeners, as audience members, because they really are, right? The microphones are a substitution for these microphones in here. Well, when you're using cardioid mics primarily for the purposes of trying to capture the characteristics of an immersive space and an immersive performance, then when using cardioid mic, you got cardioid Dan as the music listener here. So maybe an interesting kind of weird thing. I don't know, Adrian, maybe this goes viral, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
We're running out of time. There is a question here, and I know this is from Justin. Hello, Justin. We met out at the East-West session. He was kind enough to join us out there. Justin, rightfully have extensive experience with immersive recording, production, and mixing. I have used a lot of arrays, including mics by Scheps, DPA, B&K, and Neumann. I was at the event in LA. Thank you. Can you compare your mics to the DPA 4006 and B&K 4003? So I'm not going to make that comparison, and I'm biased. Back in the early 80s when Dan and I met, I was responsible, my job, I moved to Nærum, Denmark, and my job, I was responsible for introducing those microphones to the global market back in the 80s. And they are, obviously, Justin, they are fantastic. But I'm not going to make the comparison other than, certainly my background, Dan's background, we understand the physics of sound, and I think we're trying to replicate that. And I make no bones about it. We are certainly aspiring to the original B&K 4003. There's no question that, in my mind, that is a fantastic microphone system, and it's something we certainly are working and aspiring to. So, and Justin, we'd love to get your experience, and we'll arrange something offline to get a demo for you. So we're at the end of our time. Thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure. We always have great conversations. And invite you to come to visit the website. We're going to be we're planning to get at least one webinar a month. Our philosophy is trying to bring the physics and the science back into this world. And so we invite you to stay tuned go to the website, look at our library, and we'll also have demo material. I know the sessions out in LA with Willie and his ensemble, 5 of those songs are now mixed, and happy to announce that Willie is writing more material for an album to be released as an immersive format. And those of you in the Nashville area or not, if you want to come visit, we're doing another session at Ocean Way on June 12th. Please register on the website, and hopefully you can join us there. Again, thank you all for joining us, and stay tuned. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Bye now.